maybe there are people who may not like the name, and maybe there are people who might lose interest. It is what it is. I can't please everybody. And the more that I keep trying to do that, the only person I end up hurting is myself. Today, I just really want to share a little bit of insight into this rebrand and dive into the word witch because I feel like there can be some really bad connotations around that. And then just really about like trusting your inner voice and just trusting your intuition and that it is okay to pivot. It is okay to get uncomfortable and step into the unknown. So, we're going to talk a little bit about all of that. So many people think that witches were hurting communities, right? And we're hurting people. But that's not what it represents to me. A witch is somebody who is wise. It's a wise woman, a woman who is, yeah, maybe utilizing her witchcraft in the way of DIY with her herbs and her supplements and her skincare and her well-being and her self-care. A witch is a woman that is like really owning her power and is connected with nature and with humanity and her body and the phases of her body and her cycle and the phases of the moon. That is what the word witch represents for me. It really represents a woman that is in her power, owning her creative gifts and isn't this like hunched over old woman. That's not what I think of as witch. And what's really really interesting is I had a really great astrology reading not too long ago, and it was like I think it was my birth chart reading is what it's called. And like I'm familiar with astrology, but not as in depth as obviously astrologers are. And it was such a fascinating reading because this might sound really like this might go over your head. And trust me, some of it does for me too, because I don't know all the sort of astrology language. I'm still learning a lot of it. I have Pluto in my eighth house. And basically, Pluto, like there's the reading that I had, she actually dove into some of like how these planets can actually also be connected to things that happened in the past life. And so it was really interesting because Pluto, based on my past life, there is a connection there with a witch wound. And that was so wild when I had my reading. And she was like, yeah, there's like this witch wound here that, you know, in your past life, like you were deeply connected to this like, witchcraft and this healing, and you were curious and questioning things and kind of going against the grain. And because of that, perhaps you were abandoned or maybe you were burned at the stake, like something happened there. And so there's this like witch wound. And what that's really representative in the now is just really you stand for taboo. You stand for questioning. You stand for that curiosity and a different way of doing things, of maybe of healing, right? And so that was just so fascinating to me because I'm like, oh, that really resonates. And I am so interested and passionate about the taboo. And those are the conversations that I want to bring in. I want to be able to open up those conversations and just have honest conversations about maybe how I see them and maybe open up other people's mindsets around them. It's just a level of curiosity. That's really all it is. I'm just curious. And as I dive in and explore things with plant medicine or astrology or human design, I'm just here to share that with you. And you can take it or you can leave it. And maybe it resonates and maybe it doesn't. And that's all good. This is not me here trying to push something on anybody. This is just me genuinely sharing my experience of these things. And I am really interested in them. I'm interested in herbology. I'm interested in just like, again, some of those taboo topics. And so I want to be able to share my experiences with those in case that it might actually help somebody else or inspire somebody else, because I think sometimes a lot of this isn't spoken about. So it was just really interesting because I'm just looking at my astrology notes here. And yeah, she was basically saying how it's so important for you to bring some of that taboo into your day to day life because it's it's like part of your soul's journey to really express that and explore that. So that was something that so resonated with me. And I'll be sharing more about that for sure. So hence the wellness witch. And it's so interesting. Um, the day where I was sitting down and writing out, like I had to write out a new intro and everything for the podcast. And at that time, when I was writing that out, I actually didn't have the name. Like I didn't have the name yet for this podcast. I had an idea that I was going to call it the Wellness Witch. I was still just playing around with it a little bit. And then sure enough, I'm sitting here at my desk. I'm writing out the intro and, all the new stuff. And I was leaving blank where the title was because I still wasn't sure yet. And then I'm where my office is, it's at the front of the house. So I could see literally all the delivery trucks that pull up in a day. And I get a lot of deliveries. Okay. It's like all the time. So I can see the delivery trucks pull up and the Amazon delivery truck comes. The guy comes, drops off, whatever the delivery is. And I'm sitting here writing and I'm kind of like stuck. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go downstairs and grab the delivery. And then I come upstairs, bring it into my office, open the Amazon package, and what had arrived, it was a book called Witch. Yeah. And I'm sitting here writing. And then I opened that and I was like, okay, that is a clear sign, very clear sign to call this the Wellness Witch. And it's a book by Lisa Lister. If you're interested, it's called Witch. And I have many witch books and like different herbology books as well about like witchcraft. But like, again, witchcraft, we have this negative connotation around it. It's like these spells and these potions to like hurt people. No, when I think of witchcraft, I think of utilizing herbs in my garden. I think about food. I think about nutrition. Like all of that's alchemy to me, right? In its own shape and form. So anyhow, I thought that was so fascinating with the astrology piece. And then also that day sitting there and then the book arrives and it's called Witch. And then of course it kept coming to me in these ayahuasca ceremonies. So I was like, this is definitely something that's deep in my soul and it needs to get out. And I just really need to honor and trust that. Which kind of leads me into that next part of our conversation in terms of just trusting your voice and trusting your intuition. And I'm not perfect at that. I definitely have a lot of blocks that show up for me around that. And um, I have to just get like quiet enough to really tune in and connect with what it is my soul is really asking me to do. And if I'm too busy being busy, I'm gonna miss that. And so it's so important in order to connect to that intuition and connect to that inner voice is number one, get quiet, like really just sit with yourself and ask yourself, what is it that you're longing for? What is it that needs to be expressed? What is it that needs to be healed? And it was, as you know, as I was mentioning, like it was really challenging to kind of like move into this new rebrand and all the different things that were showing up. And why it was challenging was because there was this inner voice that kept saying, you might disappoint people, or people may not like it, or they may not like the name, or, who are you now to go and have like video and have people watch you, right? Like literally, these were all the things that were coming up for me. And I had to really learn to just quiet that voice. And maybe there are people who may not like the name, and maybe there are people who might lose interest. And it is what it is. I can't please everybody. And the more that I keep trying to do that, the only person I end up hurting is myself because I'm not doing the things that light me up because I'm trying to like keep the peace. And I'm sure that this can resonate with so many of you listening where you just don't do something because you have so much doubt around it. It's not going to work out. What are people going to think? People are going to hate me or whatever it might be. But how often or how many times have you done that or thought that and then you didn't proceed with that thing? And then what? It kind of dims your light. It kind of dims your spirit, right? And so I just really had to trust my voice that this was the new thing that I wanted to do. This was the name I want to have. And either you're coming with me or you're not. In either way, it's all good. So again, like radically transforming this podcast and not talking about health and hormones. So, really, on your end, a lot of the stuff is staying the same. It's just that we're also expanding the conversation beyond, health and hormones. So, that inner voice is, I think it's something that we will be learning to work with for as long as we are alive. It is always there, right? There's always going to be that inner guide, that inner voice. And there's going to be like the light and the shadow, right? The light that's like, yes, do this. This lights me up. This is exciting. And then the shadow parts of like, no, and who are you to do that? And you'll be judged and you'll be criticized. At the end of the day, I think one of the ways to really break that down so that you can kind of dispel these emotions that show up for you, or who are you to do this, and the judgments and the criticism, like how you can really dispel that is just ask yourself, okay, so what if people criticize me? Then what? Okay, well, I don't have to read their criticisms. I don't have to be connected with them. I don't have to respond to them. Okay. And then uh what if they judge me? Same thing. Well, then what? Well, they can judge me. I don't need to be connected with them. I don't need to respond to them. I can just send them some love and light and on they go. They don't need to follow me, right? Like, how does it actually impact my life? The end of the day, it really doesn't. But I think that we overthink it, thinking like it's the end of the world if somebody criticizes us or judges us. And it's so unfortunate because at the end of the day, it's really not going to have that much of an impact on your life, but we think it is. And so we don't move forward and we don't do it and we don't trust that voice. And it's unfortunate because I am certain there are so many amazing gifts in you to get out there and share and release with the world. And you're not doing it because you're so hung up on, what others are going to think of you.